Hello, everyone, and welcome to DG360. Now, with the newest flight changes, we've talked about this in the past numerous times here on the channel and in our Discord. We talked about how they kind of are slowing things down to give you that more kind of dogfight feel, obviously sacrificing realism for fun factor. MinionSoldier has put out a video called Star Citizen Master Modes, and he's going to talk about what he sees as the potential flaw. So let's see what he thinks about master modes, and maybe I'll chime in on what I think.
So SCL and more talk about master
Gator.
modes or combat mode or nav
Appreciate
mode.
you. I love
name
action
to be
on the
determined
stream.
later. Did watching that allay any fears? Did that change my mind? Did that change my perspective on what is going to be? I mean, realistically, this is the change that we've been talking about for years. This is the other shoe kind of hitting the floor. This is, you know, the acceptance of the fact that the Star Citizen, the way that ships interact with each other and
thank you, cutie pie. Thank you. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Merry Christmas.
Dance off, bro.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I kind of like the style he goes about these videos. There's not a lot of content creators left that will just give you a live take. One of the things I kind of switched to a long time ago was I would do this. When I made videos, I'd put the footage of the game, my session, and I would cut it up, and then I would just talk over it, and I would tell you what I feel. So, what's up, Panda? How you doing? Welcome to the stream here, bud. So I will actually give him points for that. Yeah, he sounds like he's having an argument with himself. Yeah, right, Wook Street. And, you know, like, I got a lot of criticism for doing this very same thing. Old school The Games, if you watch my old Star Citizen videos, 2014 through 2017, were very, very similar to this. And I would play the game, I would record footage, I'd cut it up, and then I'd just kind of talk off the cuff, tell you how I feel. Right. And it was popular to a lot of people, but there was a whole section of people that were like, dude, this is just blabbering and ranting. And, you know, I understand there's a lot of people that can't get into this type of content, you know, where you're talking about the game. And as you go through the different thoughts that you have on it, sometimes you're going to contradict yourself and sometimes you're going to argue with yourself. And I like when it's all laid out on the line. It's just real talk, right? There's people that like just the scripted. That only like scripted. And around 2018, 2019, I switched my format and did more of a news kind of style thing, you know? A lot of people miss that. A lot of people are like, hey, you need to go back to that style of content, DG. We really liked it. Maybe, I don't know. Personally, I like hanging out with you guys and just chilling out and talking off the cuff. I think there's a lot of value in that. I think sometimes when you're in this mode, more real talk happens. And if there's differences between people's perspectives on the game, a lot of times in this mode, a lot of conversation can be had. More people are more willing to listen rather than talk. And sipping apple juice, as Luigi says. Who doesn't love to spend time sipping apple juice? All right, let's keep going.
Combat in space is not really compatible with the universe as it's built out. It does not I mean, it works. It provides I would argue it provides a very good travel experience, but it doesn't provide a very good combat experience. And so I sympathize very heavily with the idea that this is not going in a good direction and it's possibly time to course correct. And so I applaud CIG's effort to do so. Now, we've talked about this in depth many times over the years. We've talked about that, you know, this was a thing that was coming, and I always warn people. I said, be careful tomorrow, buddy, because
I can't wait to
don't
see
get
tomorrow,
too comfortable with the ships that you like and thinking this ship is the meta, because it's a lot more than just, say, changing some guns or changing a missile loadout. this whole combat system and how ships move and interact with one another are going to be changed in major ways. Sooner or later.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, really, how many of us wanted to fly, a million miles of a million meters a second and have that expanse realism in this game? I don't think many. I think at the end of the day, really, when you think about it, Limitless is like, hell yeah, I wanted that. I understand the appeal of that. I'm a super realism type guy. I'm a guy who loves DCS. I'm a guy who loves realism, right? In the case of this, man, and I think I'm biased a bit, I will say this. I grew up 80s, 90s. Think about the games my space sim experiences, TIE Fighter, Wing Commander, like when you're talking combat space sims, in those days, you had like the dogfight experience. They were giving you that WW2 Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe feel. You know what I mean? Like back in the 90s, they wanted you to have that dogfight experience. Elite Dangerous was based off the same thing. One of the reasons I was a big fan of Elite Dangerous was because of the dogfight kind of simulation I had when I was out in space, and I knew it wasn't real when I was having it. Wixie says, level thinking. Some of the biggest issues come from over-expectation from what's in your head. Yeah. And we are at a crossroads right now where we're dealing with this and we're trying to figure out, hey, like, what do we really want from this? And it is, I will relate it or give an analogy to blockchain, which a lot of people really, this is probably a bad analogy because people don't understand blockchain, but blockchain is code, recording code in blocks, history, transactions in blocks stack upon each other. Eventually something happens where the community comes to kind of a fork in the road. And there's 50% that say no this, and then there's 50% that say no that. And then they get the option to do something called a hard fork. And what happens is then the blockchain separates from its initial concept into two separate chains. So this is where I feel like we're at within the flight experience and in our combat experience. What is going on, Amiro? Good to see you here, buddy. Welcome to the live stream, bro. First off, let me thank everybody for being here live. If you're watching this highlight on YouTube, thank you very much. Click the phallic symbol buttons. Some confetti will pop out, and you'll be like, whoa, that's very sexually suggestive, YouTube. I don't know if I can handle that. But, like, I would like to say thank you for everybody who's here watching and giving your opinions here live and in the comments in YouTube. I always do this every day where I go through comments. I read what you guys are thinking, and where I'll read the live chat here, and I'm thinking to myself like, wow, here's a different angle I didn't think about. It's very dynamic. It's very active for me, and I love that. Thank you for being involved. Thank you for being a positive influence and helping us grow. I super appreciate that. Let's keep going here.
The bombs will be dropped. And it seems that, at least to a certain degree, if they haven't exploded yet, they certainly have been dropped. Now, do I think that CIG is headed in the right direction? I have concerns. I
see what he's doing here.
Have concerns. I appreciate the fact that they're kind of looking at it from a Squadron 42 perspective, but I think that, unfortunately, when I heard the list of ships, and they're talking about the Hornet, and they're talking about the Gladius, the Arrow, things like that, and these are the ships, the fighters, basically, and heavy fighters that they are testing the system on, that it is negligent to not look at other ships. I mean, I would take that list, and I would basically double it, and I would add the Caterpillar, the Hammerhead, the Mole, the Reclaimer. Wait, Caterpillar, Hammerhead, Mole, Reclaimer, and possibly the Prospector as well, if not another cargo ship, a heavier, more cumbersome cargo vessel, maybe the Hercules, to that list, and I would test from the perspective of Squadron 42, but from the perspective of Star Citizen as well, because it would be one thing to kind of create a system that works for that limited slice of ships that you're going to have access to in Squadron 42, but then you might be closing yourself off from certain uncomfortable realities when it comes to the myriad of other...
He might be. I'm just saying, he might actually be.
...vehicles that are available in Star Citizen. And so that's kind of the core of my concern here, is the limited scope of the testing and the limited environment in which they are testing the game. I think that you have to test it not only from a Squadron 42 perspective and say, oh, because we're just trying to get Squadron 42 out the door. You can't make this change independent of Star Citizen and then just expect it to just graft onto Star Citizen. Now, truth be told, it can be altered beyond Squadron 42, and we could look at two separate flight models or two slightly divergent branches of flight models.
Hold on, it can be altered. Holy shit, this is getting deep.
In both games, true. And that could be a way that you could kind of have your cake and eat it too. But my concern is that in the rush to address the problem of unsatisfying combat in Squadron 42, what we might do is not really correct the problem, but instead shift the load of the problem off of this one small tranche of ships and then just dump it on the rest. Because when you move out of Squadron 42 into the persistent universe, the parameters of your game change immensely. You have to think about, what can I bring to the surface of the planet? What kind of armor? One day we're going to have to worry about what kind of armor we bring to the surface of the planet. Is it going to mesh up well with the environmental effects? Are we going to have to bring a vehicle to go do a ground mission and then drive 30 or 40 kilometers because of windstorms or ion storms or whatever, and we just can't fly over the target? We're going to have to think of a lot of these things in...
Yeah, he's telling us things that, in the future we have to think about. He's theory crafting it, right? Man, this is like old school to games. Like, this is really... Like, when I watch this, I get these really weird pangs of, like, the game's notes. Seriously, we how much theory crafting did we do back in the day? It was ridiculous. I think the channel got most popular and got the most support back in the days when I would just go off philosophically on the game and I talked it out and I talked it through. People like joining in on the journey, telling me what they thought. This is like really giving me those old school the games flavors.
Star Citizen, and it's going to bring into relevance a lot of ships that Squadron 42 doesn't see. And so I think that developing a flight model, a combat flight model in an open world PvP game
maybe we should do
that was developed only from the point of view of fighters and light fighters, medium fighters, and heavy fighters could in fact be like a tragic oversight in that development process. In the past, we've seen CIG kind of go down this kind of road before. When hover mode was first announced and hover mode was first being shown off, a number of us, myself included, all kind of called it out and said, that's a bad idea. The world isn't really built in such a way that facilitates the type of motion and the type of flight control that you envision. And even though this was, touted as the solution to the eerily hovering ship problem, which is a problem. Don't get me wrong, it's a problem. Just ships hovering at bizarre angles over the surface of a planet and just machine gunning people down with impunity or just hanging there, period, was a problem. And it did look bizarre, and it shouldn't be like that. And it was very true. But at the same time, the way that we had built the universe, the way that we had built landing pads and all of that wasn't conducive to that type of control. Now, had we built landing pads in a way that where a landing pad was at the surface of an area like New Babbage or whatnot, and a ship landed on it, and then the landing pad itself lowered into the space station and the doors closed over top of it, that would have alleviated a lot of the problems with hover mode as it was originally shown. That one of the biggest problems with hover mode was trying to navigate larger, heavier ships other than fighters into these very limited spaces, especially when we're still having to navigate with three-dimensional cameras, or three-dimensional cameras, third-person cameras. When we were forced to do that and navigate in that fashion, that, along with this new control, or this new control scheme, it just didn't work. Because the idea wasn't unsound, but the tools that we had to deal with these new parameters and these new problems were completely insufficient. And these tools are nowhere even on the horizon now. 3 years later, we still don't have them. Like a three-dimensional display that shows your ship relative to the landing pad, and showing you kind of like a 3D radar image map so you can navigate your ship in and land it.
What you're saying.
We had like a very primitive version of that years and years and years ago, but it didn't really show everything around you. It just kind of showed you relative to the landing pad. But Elite Dangerous has a vastly superior landing system than Star Citizen, and they've had that for years.
Comfortably numb.
We need something like that in the game prior to bringing in something like hover mode.
By the way, mad respect for the people that stick around for my singing. Upon initial reaction from what I saw in the data and the analytics, or as I like to call them, the analytics, it's all about alliteration. I saw 3 people leave when I started to sing Pink Floyd. It's probably millennials that didn't understand what the song even was. Probably had no relation or feeling towards that to them. They could not relate to something so very deep. And to them, I will shame them and I will say, it's time to learn from your forefathers.
Are you a big man? Huh? I'm talking to you.
I put on the big boy
You
pants.
wake up in the morning, you say, I put on my big boy pants. Look, I'm wearing a belt. I got big boy pants on.
It did.
You put on a little jacket, you go. You take your lunch, you got big boy pants
together.
You got your big boy pants and your
We're gonna
snack.
shame and we're gonna big boy
Shame.
pants. That's
Shame.
I mean, Pink Floyd. Look them up. Look them up.
But we instead we did it back asswards. And so hover mode, some people would argue it's still in the game realistically. Not really. A very limited version of it, is there.
It's only enjoyed by a select few people, Tech.
But it's realistically, it's nothing
like
like
coffee.
it
It's an
originally
acquired
was.
taste.
And that was an idea that was kind of developed from this very limited point of view.
I like that. Keeps things niche.
It wasn't looking at the game as a whole. It was just trying to think of what's the genius 5,000 IQ solution to this problem. Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
The problem is that we didn't take into account.
And this is why I stopped the format that MinionSoldier. Is that who we're talking about right now? Sorry, Minion. I've watched other MinionSoldier videos before. He's putting in the work. He's doing what he's got to do. I respect any content creator that takes the time to do this type of thing. But that's what I got. The criticism that I got when I made videos like this in the old days, when I had this, like, this is the games flavor, by the way. This is what you're watching is like Coke Classic. And who doesn't love Coke Classic, right? When they changed it up, boy, did they really F things up. I mean, hence, why is there a Coke Classic? Because they F things up. I mean, we all understand that. What I did is I never invented a new Coke. I just kept it the Coke Classic, and I moved on to Pepsi. I said, no, we're going to keep Coke. Now I'm going to fuck around with Pepsi a little bit. You see, I just switched over, right? Thank you, Oz. Thank you. Oz understands what I'm saying. Thank you, Oz. Oz, Supermod Oz, thank you for being here, my brother. I appreciate you. You're doing a lot. Let's hear for our mods, by the way. I don't think they get enough credit. There's a lot happening behind the scenes here. I would just like to thank all my mods here tonight. Thank you so much. How do I get a hold of the mongrel, says Smooth? Well, you've come to the wrong place. I like the mongrels content. I know a lot of the mongrels, and if you want to go over there, I'm sure that you can figure it out. I'm not trying to be an asshole right now, but there is something called the internet, and I have faith in you. And I cannot service you right now, Smooth. I am having a live stream, and it's just going to be very difficult. You see, I can't segue into that, and it would just stop the show. It would stop the flow. We could not let ourselves go. Slow and low would not be the tempo, and the Beastie Boys would be upset with me.
Count the universe that we had already spent millions of dollars and countless years building.
Thank you, Us. Thank you.
Instead, we developed it as if that universe didn't exist or we were going to replace everything in it. And surprise, surprise, it turns out we don't want to do all that work. So we have to kind of scrap the system because the system was not compatible with the world as it was built. And that's kind of the same problem that nav mode is proposing, is that we're kind of looking at a very narrow sample in an alternate version of the Star Citizen universe.
I am now 3/4 of the way through this video. What is his primary concern? Now, see, that is the criticism that I often got. And Tookie said it earlier. Tookie said, let's go back up here. I'm going to scroll right now. Dude started talking about the micromedia flash issues without ever discussing the current work being done. So that was one of the constructive criticisms Tookie put down. The next one Tookie said is he tangents to things that make him angry without ever talking about work being done. Now, first off, let's give some applause to Tookie on that. This is why I got out of Code Classic. See, I realized that the constructive criticism that I was having in the early to games content, very similar to MinionSoldiers, left people scratching their head. And at the end of the day, what I said is how I am pontificating, right? It's a big one. Look it up in the dictionary. How I am pontificating is completely incorrect. Because what ends up happening is people walk away confused or completely understanding me. There was too much of a rift. So I said, now I have to get out of Coke. That was Coke Classic. And now I have to move on to Pepsi. I did the news kind of version that I did for like a year and a half. And then I just realized, like, what am I doing? I had a moment. It was magical. What am I doing? I know, it's a lot of effort. Very good. Let's see. Pontificating. Yeah, 5. That's good. Got it, baby. I just had to check your math there. Make sure my audience is very high IQ. And you are. And we're happy. We're happy you're here, Gator. We're very happy you're here, Gator. You can count. And we like that. We like people that can do math on this channel. We're developing a very highbrow community. But what I would do is I would pontificate, and then I went to news, and I liked that for a little bit. But then I said, what am I doing? I'm doing this all incorrectly. What I need to do is I need to sit down. I do. You're right, Gator. Thank you so much on that. Gator, continuing the applause for Gator right now. Limitless says, oh, am I? But it ain't the IQ. We're applauding the audience. And all my vids are me just getting stuff off my chest. Not everyone will get you, DG. Just as high. Go check out my friend Tech's channel. It's super awesome, dude. I got to get back over that way, dude. Keep making videos. Please, 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 dude. Love Tech's videos. I could listen to the man for hours. I really could. You guys got to go check his channel out. Great dude. But yes, this was the old The Games flavor style. Before DG360, it was this. And I did this with everything. And there wasn't even this. We didn't even have this to look at. It was, very basic. Hangar. It was back in the days of the Hangar and Wing Arena Commander. And that was it. And we just theory crafted everything. We theory crafted survival. We theory crafted combat. We theory crafted trading, crafting, land ownership. We just theory crafted everything. Nobody else was doing it. I would like to applaud everybody that was here in the old games era. I was big into Elite Dangerous, teaching people how to PvP, and then I started getting that Star Citizen vibe, right? And I got into it, and I saw what there was to see. I saw the content. There wasn't a lot. We wanted more, and I got captured. I got captured into that, wow, this is going to be the everything game. Still am, to this day, one of the very few that are still making content, that are still into it, super passionate about it, and I will never stop covering this game. I cover others. We do it all. We have a morning podcast. It's awesome. We got a great community. It's awesome. You need to get involved in it. But in the grand scheme of this channel, there will always be Star Citizen until there is no more Star Citizen. I am that passionate about this game and this project because it literally is the game that has revolutionized the gaming space. If this game does what it pretends to do, then it will actually be one of the very first games ever that has succeeded based upon money from backers, the gamers, the people that play this game. And it will revolutionize. It's already revolutionizing the way that games are being funded. It's already doing it. So there are certain things that are happening in the game development world, in the gaming world, that I look at, that I can truly recognize, categorize, and say, wow, what is happening in this space right now is revolutionary. You don't see this happen every day. I came from a very intense gaming background in the 90s. All different types of consoles. PC, once I hit the PC, goodbye consoles. I did a couple consoles after that, but it was all PC after that. Yeah, I think that's why we're all so passionate about Star Citizen, right? No matter how we feel about the project right now, and we're all in different vibes. I get that. Everybody watching right now, all of you have different opinions and perspectives based upon your own personal experiences of this, but I can tell you I've been through all the cycles. I've been through these cycles over and over and over again. And I started to become a little bit more calm about this project, a lot more patient about the project because I understand what it wants to give us, right? And I know it's going to take a long time. And so I've set myself in that mindset. However, in 2023, I am going to be a lot more hard-lined, and I will say this. I'm saying this right now, and remember this, that I said this, because you're going to find out very quickly, probably within the first quarter or second quarter of next year, that people are going to start calling me a naysayer. And it will be the third cycle of naysayer. And I'm saying this now because I want people to realize I'm going to become much more meaner and leaner. And I want to focus again on the people in charge of teams in Cloud Imperium, if they're doing a good job or not, how they can do a better job, and those managing those positions to make sure that that $100 million in revenue that was record-breaking that happened this year is being applied correctly inside the business model. And I will be very hard on that this year coming up. And because of that stance, and because I'm going to be looking at ship sales, and I'm going to say enough concepts, let's only sell ships that are completed, you're going to see people get upset with me. And you're going to see people call me a naysayer. So I want to get that out of the way right now because I want people to, I'm going to lose a lot of audience. And this happens to me every time I take like a harder stance, I lose audience. Right. Yeah, right, Limitless. And I say this because I'm truly passionate about this project. Naysayer with stick cam, says us. I would love to afford a stick cam, man. I'm still broke, guys, after all this time, if you can believe it. But here's the thing. Wait. I'm still broke. Still broke. Years and years and years later. But here's the thing. I don't care. I'm super passionate about this game. I've been super passionate about this game from the very beginning. I will continue to be super passionate about this game because I can see what this game is, it's all in all its facets and forms. I can see that this game will revolutionize the entire space if it is successful. If this game is successful, right? Who's to say, right? We've been following it this long, huge community. They keep throwing money at issues. We want to make sure that it's more than just throwing money at issues. We want to make sure that they're putting people who have experience, that have actual passion towards this game. We want to make sure they have positions in the hierarchy at Cloud Imperium where they're getting things done. We want to make sure of that in 2023. In 2023, I will be a leaner, meaner machine. I'm telling you right now, and people will call me a naysayer. I'm just saying.
Where it's mostly fighter combat, and we're using that to define a world where you're going to have frigates and destroyers and somebody who wasn't checking their corners. And you're welcome. And yeah, like we're going to have all these heavy ships. We got corvettes coming in. We have heavy gunships like the Hammerhead. We have to consider these ships. I would say honestly that if we are going to go ahead with this combat mode, nav mode, all this stuff, fine, but you've got to add 5 more ships to the list. Caterpillar, Hammerhead, Reclaimer, Starfarer, and Mole or Prospector. I would suggest the Mole over the Prospector. Not that I'm not picking favorites there. I'm just saying because the Mole is a little bit more ponderous. And test those out in a version of the PU against those fighters. To test them out in a situation where they now have to deal with these new mechanics in the presence of these fighters and use that to inform the final product that you intend to bring to the Star Citizen universe. That's the big play. Just using it, basing it off of the fighters, and then kind of just saying, oh, let's bring it to Star Citizen and then see what happens later on. I need to, I know that some people say, oh, well, they'll obviously do that at some point. No, I need to hear them say those words. We don't need another hover mode. We don't need another Theaters of War.
Listen, I didn't think hover mode was that bad, honestly. Physics is an issue. Let's be real. It was beyond hover mode. I mean, really, hover mode was an issue, right? But, I appreciated where they went with it. I don't think I'm as negative on hover mode as he was. I was somebody who enjoyed hover mode, but however, I didn't at first. I didn't like it at first, but I then appreciated it afterwards. But here's the thing. I get his points. I get where he's coming from. But really what the true problem is that I think he needs to discuss is just the general physics, the physics grid and physics itself. That's a huge problem. Huge. We talk about it all the time. We make jokes about it. We talk about OCS, right? A lot of people hear OCS. They think that I'm talking about object container streaming. I'm not. I'm talking about object container sex. Close your ears if you're not old enough to hear this. But it's when objects figure out a way to go inside one another without bouncing all over the place, right? We talk about that all the time. Physics, man. Physics gets me.
Well, it's hey, where did all this Morozov armor and where did this Cutlass Steel come from? Oh, guess Theaters of War got canceled, quietly. But
sure did.
If we're gonna do this, and we're the other shoe is dropping, and we are officially changing this flight model.
Right, Tech. Right, dude.
In such a drastic way. Well, not really changing the flight model, but changing the parameters in which we interact with this flight model. I think that's a better way to put it. If we're going forward with this, we gotta test a wider pool of ships.
Well, we're gonna do that. That's part of the PTU experience. Really, that's just part of the PTU experience. I watched a video by Avenger talking about this. What was that? A month and a half? You guys remember that? It was about a month and a half or so ago. We were watching a video about Master Mode. We were talking about the pluses and the positives and negatives about it. It's a good one. You guys should check it out. Just type in like in my search like Avenger, and I think it'll come up. And he's an avid PvPer, right? And I'm really concerned about it in a PvP scenario, because I think that's what would be most immersion breaking, is that your PvP experience gets flawed in some manner due to this master mode. And that was my biggest gripe. That was what I was worried about. And after listening to Avenger and knowing how skilled he is in PvP, and listening to the technicals and looking at the data he provided, I'm sitting on the fence. It made me go from hard case no to like sitting on the fence waiting. And I think it's like anything in this project. I mean, like really, everything in this project is like that. Everything needs a time to be tested and see if people like it or not. That's the whole purpose of PTU. That's the one reason I really do like this setup. I like the way that they've set this up for people to test the game. Those that are subscribers, those that are really into it, those that are reporting, they go into PTU, they test it out. The Evocati members, you know, I really respect that. I like people that are actively engaged with the game, playing and saying, these are the problems. These are not only the bugs, these are not only the exploits, but these are the things I like and I don't like. And I think that voice needs to be supported and it needs to be cheered. I don't think there's enough of it. And I used to be very active in that. I used to be very active in that process. And I think in 2023, I'm going to dive back in, do the same thing I was doing about a year ago, and go back at it, because I feel like they've been very successful up to this point with this 100 million that they brought in. I want to make sure that they're applying that revenue properly in 2023, that they're building up their dev teams in the correct departments, that they balance it and they manage it correctly. It is very, very important that this happens in 2023. I don't want a backlog. I don't want this cascade of ships that will never get done. We watched the highlight where Morphologist talked about the ship cycle, you know, the ship sales cycle. It was a good talk we all had. I think it needs to continually be talked about. And I didn't agree with everything he said, but at least on that particular video, I think that Morphologist was somewhat rational, believe it or not.
Before we can kind of sit there and just say, I think we got it. Because if you're just saying you're only testing fighters, and in a Squadron 42 perspective, you don't got it.
Yeah, no, he's right on that.
You gotta do
you're
it not even in the same town. You're not even in the same state.
Yeah, he's right.
Province,
and they won't. Okay, so there's MinionSoldier's video. Go over there. I'm going to like the video. You know, this is old school to game style flavor. Go over there. Tell him what's up. Tell him DG360 supports him. We are watching him. Go over there and subscribe if that's your deal. And you know, hey, we're all having fun here. It's after party mode.